Hello, everyone. Welcome along to the F1 show. For this week, the date today is the 10th of June, the 10th of the 6th, 2021. The year really is flying by. And today, very shortly, I have Charlie on the video call as well. Here he is. He's coming back on. He's got a circle going around. Hello, Charlie Tolhurst. So we officially start this now. We start, Charlie, with a bonkers, a crazy, and a great Azerbaijan Grand Prix.
Oh my God, Jack. Can I say the race was probably the best of the season. I watched the highlights, and I tell you what a race. And for Sergio Perez, his second career win and the first for Red Bull. What a win for the Mexican in Baku last week.
It was, Charlie, and I was so happy for Sergio, so happy for Sebastian and Pierre Gasly, Charlie, getting his third podium in Formula One as well. But of course, Charlie, we are very relieved to see that Stroll and Verstappen walked out of their crashes. We'll get on to Perez in a minute, but tires failing, Charlie, at 200 miles an hour is not what we want, and that is dangerous.
It was. The crash first in the Aston Martin, and sadly threw a safety car out, which played into a lot of the strategist's hands. Do you pick your drivers? And then the second one with it reminds you of Imola last year, the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix of 2020. Max Verstappen in the dying moments of the race suffers. I think this one was the bigger crash, 200 miles per hour, right near the start finish line, and it charges literally.
Charlie, in some ways, Verstappen is very lucky that his car didn't go the other way and smash the end of the pit wall.
That would have been nasty, but thankfully Verstappen was out that crash with no serious injuries. But yeah, it was a heartbreak. It wasn't his fault. Both drivers, there wasn't their faults at all.
What do you say if you could say anything to Pirelli, Charlie? What would you say? Obviously, they need to investigate it, don't they? That's clear and obvious. I would personally be surprised if it was debris, because I think we saw Charlie Pirelli confirming Lewis Hamilton also had a tyre failure, or was about to have a tyre failure. Straight after the red flag, Charlie, there had been no debris on track. They had the track sweepers out throughout the red flag. This is a Pirelli issue, isn't it? It's clear.
It is. You have to go back to 2013, the British Grand Prix, when I remember several drivers like Fernando Alonso, Sergio Perez, and even I think Lewis Hamilton all had tyre failures. I remember that race, and it sort of mimicked what we saw in Baku last weekend. Obviously, this time around there was 2 crashes. So I think there's going to have to be a thorough investigation into this, Jack, to see what kind of issue was with the tyres blowing out.
And obviously, tyre carcasses flying around, Charlie, is not only a safety issue to the driver that's crashed, safety issues to the drivers that are behind that car as well.
Yes, exactly. You have to look at the Indy 500 when I think Jack Harvey nearly got struck by some debris coming out of turn 2. So I think, they're going to have to really check these tyre carcasses through to make sure they're really safe.
Let's go back, Charlie. Lewis, he had a good race up until the restart. The magic button, Charlie, was supposedly hit accidentally by Lewis, which caused the brakes to fail. They locked up and he went straight on. But let's not dispute, Charlie, it's the first time he's failed to score in 54 races. He will reignite his championship fight, whether he does it in France or in 2 weeks' time in Austria. It was a bad day, wasn't it, for the championship leaders?
It was a bad day for the championship leaders and a bad day on Sunday last week for Mercedes, who, by the way, Valtteri Bottas had an awful qualifying. I think Danny was in 10th place, I think he was. And finished outside the points. He struggled, Jack. Had so much pace. Lewis Hamilton then at the restart Hamilton tried to go for a move on Perez, but then it didn't work, and then he's locked up and spun off and finished behind the Hasses.
Valtteri Bottas, Charlie, has had an absolute stinker to the start of this season, hasn't he? If he continues like this, Charlie, do you see him getting the boot by Toto Wolff at the summer break?
I think potentially you got to look at Jarno Trulli quite a few years ago to when he got the boot from Renault. So could well happen to him.
George Russell, is he sitting there thinking, oh, I might be rubbing my hands together in a few months' time?
I think I'm sure Russell's looking into this at the moment very, very closely indeed.
It's kind of one of those. Okay, they give him one more chance, or do they say no? Enough's enough now. You're not performing. He hasn't. He's had the off race, hasn't he, where he's been very good, but since his time at Mercedes, has he been consistently performing well? Has he consistent? I know Lewis is a fantastic driver. I'm not saying Valtteri's not, but has he consistently been challenging Lewis, Charlie?
I don't think he has. I'm sorry to say this. There's times where he has, but you look at the pace of Max Verstappen in the Red Bull and you just see that Bottas being overtaken by Verstappen. And then, let's be honest with you, look at what happened in Imola. Like, Bottas was nowhere. He was struggling. I mean, Lando Norris got past him, I think, or George Russell even tried to overtake him. He's struggling with so much. He's obviously lacking pace with the W12. He's really struggling to find the limits of that car. And I just think he really struggled with the W12 last weekend.
That W12 isn't slow. It's a quick car. Lewis has proved it. Maybe it's not as quick as the Red Bulls, but its race day pace, Charlie, is frightening.
I think the setup that they went with last weekend, Hamilton went for quite a low downforce setup, but Bottas, I think, opted for a slightly higher downforce, lower drag. So I think, low drag coefficient. I think clearly Bottas, he's just got to drive the car well. He's struggling so far. I don't even know. I think he's not scored the points 3 times in the first 6 races. He's 3 of them. He's been out the points. This is crazy.
It is crazy, Charlie. Well, we'll move on, Charlie, to the ever-changing calendar. But first, what we look at is today, Charlie, we've seen some good news that the Austrian Grand Prix, both Austrian Grand Prix, the Styrian Grand Prix and the Austrian Grand Prix, Charlie, will be going ahead with 100% max capacity crowd.
Oh my God, really? I thought there was only going to be a few people there, but wow, this is interesting. I'm sure the Orange Army will be at turn 3 or turn 4 cheering their hats.
No international travellers, unfortunately, so I don't think
we won't see. We might get some Austrian Orange Army fans, mate.
We might get some Austrian Orange Army, and the Orange Army will definitely be out in force at the Dutch Grand Prix later in the year, I'm sure.
Yeah, 100%. I think we will get some fans. Obviously, I saw at Monaco as well, they had the drivers' parade done like in a socially distanced way. It looked quite interesting.
They did, Charlie. They did. Let's get on to the latter part of the calendar, Charlie. Obviously, Singapore's off, which is such a shame, isn't it? Because Singapore's a great event. We love it as fans. But it did seem that it would be virtually impossible to run that event this year, didn't it?
To erect the circuit, that would take weeks.
It would, Charlie. So what we're hearing is that Mugello or Nürburgring will be added in place of Singapore. And then Formula One is expected to announce that the Australian and the Brazilian Grand Prix will also be off. And we could potentially, Charlie, get a race at Turkey in place of the Australian Grand Prix late November, so about the same time as last year, and we could potentially get a second race at Austin, Charlie, which, by the way, is sold out 100% as well. Yeah. We could potentially go to somewhere else like Magny-Cours. But the thing is, Charlie, if America's promising to have a full crowd there for both events, Formula One would look at the economic side of this and choose to go for the full crowd, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I think with Magny, I think it's a difficult track. Sort of looking at the cars now, this would be very, very fast, especially that first sector with the new cars we've got. But I think you're better off going for a circuit that Formula One have raced at, like Austin. I mean, the Australian Grand Prix, again, if that goes off, I mean, it's a shame because they were planning on there were some huge track modifications at the circuit with turns, I think 8 and 9, or turns 9 and 10, receiving a massive upgrade there. So, yeah, it's a shame. I think we'll see what Formula One comes up with in the coming months.
But the thing is, Charlie, the Australian government have put rules in where they're not even allowing Australian citizens back to their country. So it's in the hands, isn't it, of the Australian government. If they want the economic boost, they will allow it. If they don't, then they won't. It's simple as that.
Yeah, you saw that with the tennis as well. They're all in quarantine for 2 weeks. I think for Formula One, it will be a logistical nightmare.
Well, you can't quarantine. What would it be? 2,000 people for 14 days. It's impossible.
Yeah, I think, and also you'd waste probably lots of key races of the season as well.
Yeah, they'd effectively have to go. Well, it's logistically impossible. There's no way it's going to happen if Formula One have to quarantine. But interestingly, Charlie, they have released some new pictures of the new Saudi Arabian pit building.
Is that in Jeddah?
Yeah, it is in Jeddah, Charlie. It looks state of the art, actually, technology wise. But the thing is, Charlie, it's caused a lot of controversy because the whole We Racers One gesture means human rights, and Formula One wants equality. The thing is with this pit building, Charlie, it's about 500 yards away from Execution Square in Saudi Arabia, where they do still execute some people. Formula One has got slated, criticised, and just ultimately got so many complaints about doing this, Charlie. Do you know what? I can't understand it. Why you would do a We Racers One gesture and then decide to hold a race where there's execution still happening, other than for money?
It's a political issue, Jack. I don't really want to explain this on the podcast tonight. I think this race is certainly... I mean, Lewis Hamilton certainly will have a say on this, because I know he's been speaking about this when he was in Bahrain.
He already has had his say on it, hasn't he?
Yeah. I think if the race goes there, certainly going to be Lewis Hamilton will be the one that will certainly voice these concerns, I'm sure, at the event.
And the thing is, Charlie, I don't know whether the Saudi Arabians would agree with taking the knee as well before the event. I don't know how they look at that. I know they don't do it in sport, so I don't see how. I don't know how they'd look at that. It would be a very controversial Grand Prix, wouldn't it?
I think it would be, but I suppose we want to see more races on the calendar. I think we need to get if this track does actually look. I'm not going to lie, I actually really like the look of this circuit. I think it looks quite interesting. I know it's controversial, but the thing is, it's a fast track, this one, and it looks.
See, I don't. In terms of overtaking, I don't think the track's all that.
Probably not.
If I'm honest, high speed racing. Well, not racing, but cars going high speed, then yeah, it looks all right. But actually, for overtaking and for entertainment, is it going to be that good? We have to find out.
Turn one, I suppose, is the one that everyone will be overtaking, I reckon, in that position.
Do I think it will be as good as Azerbaijan? Absolutely not.
Probably not.
Because, Charlie, did you know, true stat, we've had 5 Azerbaijan or 4 Azerbaijan Grand Prix and 1 European Grand Prix. We've had 5 different pole sitters, 5 different fastest lap drivers, and 5 different race winners. No one in Formula One has ever won or sat on pole or got the fastest lap in Azerbaijan twice.
No.
True fact. And the only person that came close to doing it, Charlie, was Valtteri Bottas, 2018, 2019. But he's tired with about 2 laps to go in 2018.
Then he's putting a puncture and he just, heartbreak.
But that time it was to do with debris.
Yeah.
So let's get on to Sergio, Charlie. Checo Perez. he had a great race, didn't he? Got a bit fortunate with Max having his accident, but nonetheless, he held off a 7-time world champion. He looks really good and happy in that Red Bull now, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. I think he looks good, and I think when you look at the start of the season, he was taking a bit of time to get used to it. But I think now he seems like he's got to grips with that car, and I think he could now be a real threat in some races ahead of us.
And has he reignited his own championship fight? Because he's not that far behind, realistically, is he?
No, I think he's about third, I think, or something in the standings now.
Yeah, he's on 69 points, so he's about 35 behind. But if Verstappen retires, Charlie, and Hamilton also has another stinker, then that brings Perez right into playing this championship.
It's going to be interesting, Jack. Perez is a very good driver around many of the the more technical laps. He looks really good around it. I think obviously you've got circuits coming up like Perez is really good on, like, obviously Azerbaijan, Bahrain, another circuit he goes quite well around. I don't know. There's loads of circuits that Sergio has.
He also normally goes quite well around the Red Bull Ring.
At Austria as well. Yeah, that's another track that he I think finished about P5 once or something, or P4. It's really good round there.
But Charlie, the main man, might be the only time that we've seen a happier team other than the team that won. Aston Martin, Charlie, they've worked so hard for that moment, haven't they? And you saw what it meant to Otmar Sav and Stroll's father, Lawrence Stroll. That's it. Couldn't think of the name for a second. Lawrence Stroll and Sebastian Vettel, Charlie. It meant the absolute world to them, didn't it?
Yeah, that's Vettel's best result since his win in 2019 in Singapore, but it's also his best result since Turkey last year when he finished third for Ferrari in that chaotic wet race. But yes, for Vettel, what a race. Incredible drive. I think he started 11th on the grid, free choice of tyre, worked his way through the safety cars or the red flag as well. And I tell you what, the move on Gasly, I think, got him the podium that he deserved.
It did, Charlie, but we can't discount what a drive Pierre Gasly did either.
No, Pierre Gasly, I mean, he started fourth on the grid. I'd tell you what, Jack, AlphaTauri were really strong around the Baku City circuit. I watched Yuki Tsunoda as well. He finished 7th. Good drive from him. I know he had a qualifying crash, but the racing, he actually looked very strong. Good overtaking from him. But Pierre Gasly, though, what a drive from him to finish third. And I'll tell you what, I think he was certainly one of the contenders for driver of the day last week.
Well, Sebastian Vettel got drive for the day. Yeah. About 43% of the vote, Charlie. There was 3 drivers, Charlie, I would say clicked on that weekend at Baku. Yuki Tsunoda in the AlphaTauri, Sebastian Vettel in the Aston Martin, and Sergio Perez in the Red Bull. They looked so comfortable, Charlie, all weekend, didn't they?
Yes, I did. Yes, they did. I mean, to be honest with you, another driver I would say done quite well, Fernando Alonso in 6th for Alpine. I actually really, really thought his race pace was really strong.
And it was a bit of a heartbreak for Esteban Ocon, didn't it? So that did make up, kind of make up how the Alpine team would have been feeling prior to that points finish for Fernando. But Bernd Maylander, Charlie, he had a bit of time to put his feet up at Monaco. He might not have had time to put one leg up at Azerbaijan. It was one of those races, Charlie, where it needed the safety car, didn't it, to spice the ending up a bit.
It did, and it was a long day for him. The race was over 2 hours long, and yeah, he certainly was out there in his whatever it was, a Mercedes AMG GT2 and Aston Martin that was out doing the laps.
And once he got deployed in his Mercedes, Charlie, Bernd Maylander turned the race on its head.
It did. It spiced up the attrition. Certainly the attrition was right there for all the drivers.
Whilst we're on the safety cars, Charlie, the FIA have been criticised by Charles Leclerc, especially, because they didn't deploy the safety car straight away. Now, I can't understand why they would do this, Charlie. Both accidents were obvious it was going to need a safety car. So why did they wait? That's what I don't know. Were they waiting for the leaders to get back round to the front?
I don't know. I find this quite bizarre. I just really do.
Because especially for Stroll's crash, they closed the pit lane, didn't they, before they deployed the safety car?
That's a bit strange. Why would they do that? They should have just said to the race control, deploy the safety car immediately. Drivers could have ran through that debris and potentially crashed into the barrier.
Yeah, but it was quite a long safety car for Stroll, and then we got about 20 more laps, and Verstappen's tyre went. We had a safety car, Charlie, which became the red flag, the second one of the season. I have to say, Charlie, I did agree with Michael Massey's decision there to stop it. It meant that we can give the track a proper clean up, and we would get 2 laps of racing at the end, in it. We'd have a 2-lap shootout, and we could end the race properly.
Yeah.
But obviously, whilst we're waiting, that is the bit, isn't it? When you've got to wait that half an hour.
Yeah, long wait.
That half an hour, Charlie, seems like half a day, more like, doesn't it? When you're just waiting there, you're just sitting there. Come on, when's the 10-minute warning going to be? When's the 10-minute warning going to be? And then when it comes, you're like, yay, 10 minutes to go, and then that 10 minutes seems like an hour as well.
Yeah, certainly. So it was quite a long red flag for everyone. It was about over half an hour. I knew that was an issue for many people.
But Charlie, if you're a driver, you're in that zone, aren't you? Then the red flag comes out. You get out the car, and you're seeing the replays of the crashes. You're seeing everyone else. You got the team around you. You've got to try and stay in that zone, haven't you? That zone, that racing zone.
Yeah, 100%. Because the red flag is the time to unwind, get the energy back, and then obviously once you get back in the car, you need to be very focused when you race.
I mean, some drivers like Sebastian Vettel actually chose to stay in the car, didn't they? I know Lewis always gets out the car. He likes to go to have a bit of a ride on his scooter up and down the pit lane and get some photos of some other cars, Charlie. I wonder what he might be doing there.
Or Kimi Räikkönen in Malaysia 2009
likes to get an ice cream.
Gets his ice cream.
I mean, it was a hot day that day, so we give it to Kimi. I mean, it would have given him plenty of energy, wouldn't it? Would it have made him want to go to the toilet? I don't know.
Yeah, certainly. I remember that. Very thundery and wet Malaysia Grand Prix 2009. Of course, that race was stopped partway through because of extreme weather.
It was. It never restarted after that, did it?
Nope.
Hopefully. Do you know what, Charlie? For Austria, we are supposed to get some rain on both weekends. Yeah, would you like some rain to spice it up a bit? I don't know.
I think it would go quite well in Austria in the rain, actually, because there's a lot of overtaking points. I think it could be a slippery track, I think, to overtake on.
I mean, obviously we had quite a lot of rain, didn't we, at Styria last year, especially for qualifying.
We did lots of rain in Q3, I remember.
Yeah, so it's more the second weekend. Actually, both weekends. But yeah, it looks actually pretty clear, the weather, until we get to Zandvoort, and then it all goes downhill. And Singapore, it was supposed to rain, but obviously we're unfortunately not going to Singapore anymore, Charlie. If we go to Suzuka, we might still get a bit of showers there.
Yeah, these weather forecasts can all change, of course, nearer the time.
It can, obviously.
Yeah, that's their predictions, of course, though. We'll keep updating on that.
Yeah, and obviously Saudi Arabia is saying it's going to rain, Charlie. What is going on?
That will be interesting, I think, certainly. We'll keep you updated on the weather as we get that.
No, I'll be surprised. I'll be very, very surprised if it rains in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I'll be surprised as well. But I want to get on to, Jack, before we finish this podcast, about the debate going around about the Formula One flexi wings, because I think after the French Grand Prix, there is going to be a thorough investigation into this.
I mean, I'll tell you what, Charlie. I've looked at the front wing of the Mercedes. That also flexes more than 2 inches. look at the front wing and the rear wing of every car. They all flex. So I would be very disappointed if the FIA said Red Bull had to take theirs off, because I think it would be very unfair indeed.
I think as well, when I watched the obviously they had interviews last week. Toto Wolff, Christian Horner did in Baku. Christian Horner was saying the Mercedes wing flexed more than 2 meters, and then I think Toto Wolff was then going on about the Red Bull rear wing sort of flexing more. So it's interesting. I mean, to be honest with you, this is a political issue for Toto Wolff and Red Bull to sort out. What are Mercedes thinking here?
If you're the FIA, you either don't take it away from anyone or you take it away from everyone. That's what I would like to see. Okay, if you take it away from Red Bull, you take it away from everyone.
Yeah, I think this helps them. If they've obviously found a loophole in the regulations to allow this wing to flex slightly. I mean, you got to watch the onboards from. I think they are concerned mainly about Verstappen's car more than Perez's car, if I remember.
Yeah, because it seems to be Verstappen's car that's running the more flexier wing. But I was watching at some onboard shots from Baku, Charlie. It does clearly flex more than the 2 centimeters that it's allowed to. But equally, the front wing of the Mercedes flexes way more than the 2 centimeters that it's allowed to as well. So I don't exactly know what the rule is for front wings. I think it is the same as rear wings, but I would need to check the rule book for that. But it's a big political talk. It's something that we need to leave to the FIA really to decide. And like you say, Charlie, we're expecting to get the verdict on the French Grand Prix weekend which is next week, at the Castellet. But yeah, I don't know what they will decide. The rule will come in from the Red Bull Ring, from the first race at Red Bull Ring. So look, who knows? It's in the hands of Michael Massey and the stewards and the safety directors at FIA. So we'll leave it down to them. But Charlie, today for motorsport was a bit of an emotional day as well, because it was indeed the funeral of young Jason Dupasquire, who, like we said last week, Charlie, did unfortunately lose his life at Mugello at just 19 years of age. Yeah,
this death was I was just it's one that motorbike racing fans will never forget. I will forget. I'll never forget this moment, because it's such a horrifying accident that he had at the exit of the Ariabata 2. Someone, unfortunately, I will say this now, he did get run over very sadly by another bike, and that is the worst possible accident you could have.
And he got run over in the worst possible place, didn't he? The forehead.
Yes, and obviously, I mean, I don't even know in bike racing they even have a hands device as well. I remember Dale Earnhardt.
No, they don't. They don't have a hands device. No.
It reminds you very much, Jack, of Dale Earnhardt's horrifying Daytona 500 crash in 2001, where he died after suffering the skull fracture during that NASCAR Cup Series race. It's a horrible crash. My thoughts are with Jason Dupasquire right now.
And it was great to see, Charlie, so many MotoGP drivers there, and Formula One drivers were there as well, paying their respects as we pay our respects. But we're going to end this. Well, we're coming up to 30 minutes now, so it's unfortunately time to end this live. We'll see you next week on the F1 show.